Welcome to the latest edition of Beyond the Arc. I'm John Gonzalez alongside Brad Botkin from CBSSports.com is here. It's been a second. I haven't seen you in a minute.
Yeah. Hey, congrats on the Super Bowl.
I appreciate that. They couldn't have done it without me. I was really worried that I was going to let everybody down, but we pulled through in the end. Very exciting stuff. We're going to talk about basketball, though, today on this show. More on the AD injury a little bit later on, and the Mavs fan revolt continues. Brad, that thing is spreading. It got a little crazy last night. They didn't even play. Lakers grab a new center from the discard pile. Brandon Ingram has a new deal. We'll discuss his future and the Raptors. And, of course, the Sixers cannot stop being the Sixers. Womp womp. And we'll do team of the night. But first, Kevin Durant last night. The Suns lost at home to the Grizz, Brad. But KD became just the 8th player ever to score 30,000 points. He did it in kind of weird fashion. He went to the rack with like a minute and change left in the third quarter and got fouled. He made both, but the Grizz called a timeout in the middle. So it was like, there wasn't a lot of drama or spectacle to it, but further confirming what we already know about Kevin Durant, that he's one of the great players of all time.
Yeah, and specifically maybe the great scorer of all time. You know, he's not going to end up on top of that list, but I was looking at it, and he can get realistically as high as 4, I believe. I think he can get past Kobe. You know, his traditional season, if he has gotten to the 70 game mark, is about 2,000 points pretty easily. So even if you take off 400 or 500 for some 55, 60 game seasons here in the twilight of his career, he's very much in range of Kobe and getting into the top 4, and certainly the guys right ahead of him and into the top 6. So yeah, one of the great scorers of all time, a guy who, you know, kind of to me really ushered in this, what we're watching right now, which is taller, bigger guys with incredible skill sets, incredible length, 3-level scorers. He's sort of the athletic evolution of Dirk Nowitzki, the tall shooter, the one-legged, the elbow player, can step back behind the arc, but does it with an even greater athletic variety. So, you know, to me, in terms of, I certainly can't speak completely back to the beginning of the NBA, but anybody I've ever watched in terms of just who can you give the ball to independent of the system, independent of how he's being defended, doubled, tripled, whatever. And he can get a clean look, the same look he can get against any defense. It doesn't matter. He's completely oblivious to the defender in front of him because of the length of that jump shot. So to me, one of the most unique and maybe just flat out the best single-handed scorer that the game's ever seen.
All of those things that you said are correct. And yet, as I was watching that last night, I couldn't help but feel underwhelmed by the moment and also kind of bummed out for KD. I haven't seen you since before the trade deadline. Post-trade deadline, it sucks that he's in Phoenix, man. Yeah. He should have taken the out. That team is garbage. Man, they've lost 6 of 10. They're in 11th place, Brad. They're 1 game back of Golden State now for the play, and they're just 2 up on the Spurs and only 3.5 up on the Blazers, who have now lost a couple. But you know, we can get to the Blazers some other day. I just don't understand what the hell that organization is doing. But my point here is that Kevin Durant, a generational player who scored 30,000 points last night, tree falling in the woods for me here. Everybody just kind of went meh and then moved on. I just wish he had gotten out. I think probably it's coming this offseason.
The thing is I don't know that it is like historically, and for him, the accomplishment, of course, it's a massive deal, but all of these things sort of fall flat. If you're not, like, when somebody's kind of always passing somebody, moving, like when whoever moves into 3rd all time in assists or something, it's kind of a Twitter moment. I don't know that this was ever going to be a fireworks situation, but I feel you on the depression of him being in Phoenix overall, not just about this moment, but yeah, that team's on borrowed time.
They're on borrowed time. We were doing this the other day where we were looking at the back end of the Western Conference. I want to ask you about it. So as we're sitting here, as I mentioned, the Suns are on the outside of the play-in looking in. You got to pick one of the Wolves, Mavericks, Kings, Warriors, and Suns to be out of the playoffs. The Spurs and the Blazers, as I said, are a little bit farther down. For me, it's the Suns. I don't think the Suns are going to make it. They're sinking fast.
I can't believe we actually have to throw the Blazers in there. I mean, kudos. They're like, if they were in the East, they'd be like,
It's so dumb.
yo, can we get top 6?
I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who does the Rights to Ricky Sanchez podcast, which is the Sixers fan podcast. It's the biggest, fan team related podcast out there. And he's a big Blazers guy. And he was trying to make the case for the Blazers winning some games and teaching these guys and whatever. And I'm like, they're playing DeAndre Ayton. Explain to me what this means. This is incredibly, exceedingly dumb.
Yeah. The Blazers we could have a whole podcast about the Blazers, why they are or aren't interesting. But you got to tell your boy, Rights to Ricky Sanchez is without a doubt, hands down, the best podcast name out there. It's so good. I've always loved it.
They've done a really good job, and we will have a little bit of Sixers talk, unfortunately, later in the pod. But yes, I'm out on the Suns. I think that they're falling like a stone. Let's do a little Grizz talk.
I would pick them, or we'll see how the Levine thing goes. We've seen the Levine DeRozan thing play out. I wouldn't pencil them in, but yeah, certainly the way the Warriors have looked. I think Dallas gets it together. Let's cross our fingers with AD. We'll get to that, but yeah, I don't feel good about the Suns.
Before we move on to the aforementioned Mavericks, the Grizz have now won 8 of 10. They're a game and a half up on the Nugs. They were up 19 last night. They played 11 guys again. They're kind of like the platonic ideal of what Golden State has wanted to do with these deep rotations. Only Ja, Triple J, and Bane played 30 minutes last night. And generally, they don't play their guys more than 30 minutes. Where are you on the Grizz in terms of Western Conference contenders?
I love them. Ja hasn't been spectacular this year. I think Jaren Jackson's been their best player.
Yes.
I've been talking about them since early in the season in terms of their ability to score points in the paint. And then when they got Bane back and they get a little bit more shooting around that to supplement that and space the floor a bit, they're very difficult to guard. They defend. And unlike the early Warriors, where I think they were playing that deep of a rotation out of an inability to find one that worked, I actually think the Grizzlies are doing it for the right reasons. They have a lot of good players. It has not cost them in the standings. And I think in the end, they've found a lot of different rotations that work for them. I think the Grizzlies are very good. And I think they're the perfect representative of a team that is somewhere in that second tier of Western Conference team, which is pretty much everyone below OKC. In this age of parity, that I could make a really good case actually for about 5 or 6 teams, and I would put Memphis. If you even want to tier those teams, I would put them toward the top of that tier.
Yeah, I've liked them all season. I'm glad that you are on board with my Triple J as the best player on the Memphis Grizzlies take. I was thinking about this last night. I have to really sit down and look at it, but he's obviously an all-star this year. He's going to make all defense. I think he's got a very strong all-NBA case. I don't know that he'll be second team, but I'd be very surprised if he didn't make third team. He's been that good.
He's been great. It's one of the only draft picks I've ever actually gotten right. I'm so bad at saying who's going to be good and who isn't. But I remember when I watched him coming out of Michigan State, I was just like, this guy's so – I remember making a case back before I knew what because he was Luka's draft, right?
I think so. I'd have to –
So it was like
I'd have to go back. I'm bad at remembering drafts.
Listed 8 and went 1, and Bagley went 2. I mean, Luka probably now we know he should have, but even back then probably should have been 1. But I remember thinking the only guy that I would even discuss with Luka is Jaren Jackson. He just was so defensively mobile. You could see that he could shoot. He had really good feel around the paint defensively and offensively. It's like one of the only draft picks that I've been like, that guy's going to be so good. And he has been. He's been exactly what I thought he could be. Ja is still the guy come playoff time that he's the reason. If you're going to rank the Grizzlies as a true contender, even though I do agree with you, Jaren's been the best player, that Ja is the guy that takes their ceiling the highest. If he doesn't start getting those buckets in half court sense where he can break down a defense at will, get into the paint, have some 40-point games, they're not going to the finals. So Jaren Jackson has been the best player. Ja remains the ceiling.
Yeah, he's their engine. And he even said he hasn't had that good of a season this year. He's been intermittently available, injured at times. He hasn't been as effective and efficient on the floor as he could be, but he's been playing better of late. He played really well last night. Let's go elsewhere in the Western Conference. We got to discuss again, the Dallas Mavericks. So you wrote about this in your latest column about the fallout from the Luka and the Anthony Davis trade continues. And I thought you had a really so there's been a lot of groundswell, obviously, Mavs sentiment for the ownership and also Nico Harrison. By the way, before you even get to your column, did you see? So, Mavs fans have been losing their minds. There have been protests. There have been multiple ejections on Monday against the Kings game where they were just kicking out their own fans for chanting "Fire Nico." Last night, they didn't even play. But in Dallas, at the SMU game, a whole bunch of "Fire Nico" chants broke out. This dude can't go anywhere in Dallas.
No, it's statewide, man. Forget it.
It's bad news.
You know what, Todd? I really, because I remember back when Russell Westbrook was getting, remember he was just getting killed at games every time he shot for the Lakers. It was getting brutal for his family, and it's like, let's not bring the family into it. And if there's credence to the death threat reports, let's chill on that. But all reasonable heckling, Nico, you made your bed. Whoever instructed him to do the trade made their bed, and put the jumbotron on, let the fans have their say. The single most ridiculous trade in any sport I've ever seen, ever, from a return standpoint, from an age standpoint, from their rationale afterwards and the PR of it standpoint. Just an absolutely ridiculous, indefensible trade that I've talked about seemingly with everybody except you. So let's get at it.
Yeah, no, I there's something in your column I want to get to in a second, but about this whole, let's just pause for a second on the PR component here, because you have the Mavs governor, Patrick Dumont, who comes out and challenges Luka's work ethic and says, if you want to take a vacation, don't do it with us. And then, so not only did they trade the most popular player on the team and the second most popular player in franchise history, but then they actively go to war with their fans by tossing fans out of the arena. And I just think, look, if you're going to do this, you have to have pretty thick skin here, but it's also a pretty bad idea to, on Luka's way out the door, to kick him while he's down. And then on top of that, decide you're going to boost fans from the arena. What are you doing? They already are. Everybody in Dallas, I have so many friends in Dallas, and they're all angry about this. And they're made even angrier by the fact that they just chanting "Fire Nico" is going to get you ejected. I think that's ridiculous.
It's unbelievable. Come on, man. They're not saying anything like "Fire Nico." Are you kidding me? The stuff that gets thrown at players in every game and "Fire Nico." This is tame. He deserves way worse. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is tame, and I'm surprised that the NBA is letting that go down. Let's take a quick break, and then on the other side, we're going to discuss more about your column. You had something really interesting in there that I think stood out, and that will further this discussion on what's happening with the Dallas Mavericks, who are without basically any bigs for the foreseeable future. That's coming up on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc.
We dig it. Do you? The Pro Volleyball Federation on CBS Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. Just a reminder, you can get us wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Please download, subscribe, leave a review. And if you listen on Spotify, if you look below the play button on the Spotify app in full screen mode, you can leave us a comment or a question about the show. All right, in your column, and I encourage everybody to go and read, it's the Hater Report by Brad Botkin on CBSSports.com. You had a really interesting thing in there about, so the Mavericks, trying to do their justification about why they moved on from Luka. He doesn't have a good work ethic. His conditioning's no good. Also, he is injured, right? However, as you pointed out through the great Tom Haberstroh, who's one of the best in the business, that Anthony Davis was injured when they traded for him and then is now further injured with an adductor strain and is out indefinitely going forward. So Tom Haberstroh noted that if AD misses 10 games, which it looks likely he will, it will be the 7th double-digit absence due to injury in his last 7 seasons. Luka, by comparison, has just one stretch like that in the last 7 seasons. I thought that was really on point, Brad, because look, I like AD a lot, but the justification of, Luka's never available compared to AD doesn't really hold water.
No, it doesn't. And I'm so glad that Tom found that and put that out there, because I was on that thought train and I was like, I know Luka, I watched this. I know he has not had these extended absences. He's been actually very durable. And then when I saw the data back that up, it's like, okay, so yes, There's no question that to this point, Luka's been more durable. He's younger. That's no rationale. But then Dallas is going to say, well, we're speculating here. We're projecting into the future. We don't think he's going to hold up over this max contract that we are going to give him. So it's not about what he's done in the past. Okay, fine. Then the guy that you trade for at least needs to hold water through that lens of moving forward. I have reason to believe that his projections will be better. He's currently injured. He's got 7 times more 10-game absences over the course of Luka's career. He's one of the most injury-prone players in the league. If you are going to be so short-sighted as to see the last few years where he's enjoyed pretty good health and think that rules out his injury history, even if he was perfectly healthy, he's 32. So it's just like such an insane rationale to get rid of Luka Doncic. It's unbelievable. I mean, at least go out and get the healthiest, trimmest, like best in shape, never hurt player of all time if that's going to be your rationale. Like, you don't, literally the guy that's named Street Clothes, you go and get because you don't think your guy's going to be in uniform enough. It's so crazy that I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it's my own. I'm having to go like, there has to be something here. Like David Stern, I've heard, from the grave, like we need ratings to go up. Luka and the Lakers match made. Now, like, I'll believe anything because it's so absurd. And the fact that they didn't even come to him, it's not like Rob Pelinka, anyone calling him about Luka, it would have been like blasphemy. Like, are you seriously calling me about Luka? Like, no one would even try that. He called them. Like, dude, get coffee and trade Luka Doncic. It's unbelievable, John.
There's going to be more stuff that's going to come out about this because it can't just be what it appears to be, because if it is, it's malpractice. If you're going to trade Luka, if you've decided that you've had enough of the Luka Doncic business, then the proper time to trade him is after he signs the Supermax. I know you don't want to pay him the Supermax, but you trade him after that because then he doesn't have any choice in where his destination is, and you can get the biggest package for him because he's under control, and every team in the NBA would be lined up to go and get this dude.
But John, even if the max is in play, there's every team in the league would line up to pay him the max. So even right now, before they give him that, even they would still trade anything for him. They would still
probably. But all I'm saying is, in terms of like what would be the time you could get the absolute greatest value, you probably still get it now anyway, even though there'd be a chance that he wouldn't sign with you and he would walk. But there'd be that much more.
It would bring some smaller market teams that you're not sure he would stay with.
Yeah, right. And also, if you trade him before he signs a deal, then he's not eligible for the Supermax. One quick thing about this before we move on from the Mavericks, who are an absolute free fall. Earlier, I was asking, so they don't have any bigs at all. I can't wait to see who plays center tonight against the Golden State Warriors, and the Warriors are playing your Warriors are playing much better with Jimmy Butler. He's looked really good. But earlier, I was asking you about the Suns, and are the Suns cooked? Are they going to be the team that's on its way out? Producer Aaron brought up a really good point. We don't know how long Anthony Davis is going to be out. Derek Lively is likely out for the rest of the regular season. Gafford now is going to be out for probably 2 weeks before he's reevaluated. He's got a knee injury. Do you like the Mavs better than the Suns? The Mavs are in the spot too.
Yeah, so here's another leg of the crutch that gets chopped out from the rationale for that trade. I made this point right when it happened. It's a ridiculous trade, don't get me wrong, but with a healthy Anthony Davis from in a 1 year run, it's ridiculous long term. Absolutely, margin for error shrinks, all these things, injury, all of this stuff. But if you wanted to make, and Nico Harrison clearly, or whoever was responsible for this, talked themselves into, for 1 year, we have more lineup versatility with Anthony. We can run 2 big lineups. We can run him at the 4 where he likes to play. He can play alongside Lively or Gafford. We can do all kinds of different things with shooting around him, and Kyrie and him being the inside-out playmaking tandem with shooting around him to space. It's like kind of a perfect setup, and I would actually argue could be more versatile than a Luka-led lineup. And for 1 year, defensively elite, all these things, they might have been in a slightly better position to win this year. He's still a ridiculous trade. Long-term, can't make it ever. Ridiculous. But now, with no bigs, to your point, even the basketball rationale that you wanted to make for like a 30-year or a 30-game window, now that's gone. The whole thing, lineup versatility, twin tower, him hit the 4, it's all out the window. Like, I swear I don't believe in karma, but I almost it's like somebody was like, this was so dumb. 80s going down in the first game. Sorry. That's how it goes. And then Gafford's going too.
You mentioned karma in the column. That was a good rant by you. You mentioned karma in the column. We had discussed this, kicked it around a little bit on the program yesterday. Call it what you want. Karma, a curse, whatever. Do you buy in like the curse of Luka since they moved on from Luka? AD went down, Gafford went down. They have no bigs. They lost to the Kings the other night. Everybody's booing them. The vibes for that team could not be worse.
Oh my God. Vibes doesn't even there's no, that's the biggest this is almost, and in any other instance in sports history, if you were to bring up the Babe Ruth trade to the Yankees, you'd be like, dude, chill out. Hyperbole. Like, okay, this is about as freaking close as you can get to dumping Babe Ruth. I bet you the Red Sox back in the day, to justify whatever they sold him for, whenever the owner had money, needed money issues, whatever. Like, I bet they were like, man, this Babe Ruth guy, he's fat. He drinks too much. We can't invest in him long term. I mean, it's literally, I think, as close as you can come to trading Babe Ruth. 6 years in the league, 3 conference finals, 1 finals, probably the second best player in the world. On the worst night, top 4 or 5. He is going to be a top 10 player, bar none, barring injury, no question about it. And you've got him in your house from birth. From the infancy, the beginning of his NBA career, you have got him. You landed him. They traded Babe Ruth. He's that unbelievable. And it's like, if you're ever going to believe in karma, the Red Sox lost for what, like 1,000 years? Like, the curse of Luka is legitimate. It's legitimate. It tears from a mental standpoint. I don't even know, even if AD started playing well, I think the psychological factor of that team, even if he'd stayed healthy, there's the seismic, that I don't even know if they were going to be able to recover psychologically. They traded Babe Ruth.
We're a week into this, and we've already confirmed that there's a curse. And also, I don't know if it's the lighting or you're tan from living in Florida or your blood pressure is up because you've gone full flush right now. I'm a little concerned about your health. We're going to take a quick break. You're going to take a breather. I need you to maybe have some water, suck in some oxygen.
I think I was playing tennis. I was playing tennis too long yesterday.
We'll continue this on the other side. We'll talk about Luka's new team, the Lakers, who picked up a big, I think sky's the limit for this young guy. We'll talk about him on the other side. This is Beyond the Arc.
Baby, we are gonna start a fire.
From world-renowned clubs
simply devastating
to worldwide stars.
Wrexham have done it. This incredible ride continues.
The English Football League on CBS Sports Network, and stream every match live on Paramount Plus.
All right, welcome back to Beyond the Arc. A reminder, you can find us on YouTube at Beyond the Arc CBS. Please hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe. If you hit the little bell symbol, you'll get notified when we go live. We're live most days, Monday through Friday at noon Eastern. And then we've also been doing a lot of post-game shows, special content, things of that nature. So you'll get notified when we go live. To the Lakers, Brad, as I mentioned, they were looking for a center. They've got Jackson Hayes. The Mark Williams deal fell through. They rescinded it because of his health. They're looking around. They're like, well, what are we going to do? And man, they nailed it. They landed on a young up-and-coming prospect named Alex Len, who's 31 years old and was without a job. He had been planning to sign with the Pacers. And then he said, hey, if I can go play with Luka and LeBron, I'm going to do that instead. So they waived Christian Wood. In comes Alex Len. I guess they only need him to play, I don't know, at most 15 minutes a night. I'm not sure you can squeeze 15 minutes a night out of Alex Len.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to figure out ways to play small when they need to,
they're going to have to.
When they go away from Jackson Hayes. The Lakers are the opposite of the Mavericks. They just stay winning. Rob Pelinka is going to walk away from this season with the Executive of the Year, and all he did is go to coffee.
I'm going to ask you, let's pause on that for a second, because Bill and I were discussing that very thing the other day. And on the one hand, I think there's a really good case to be made for Rob Pelinka as Executive of the Year because he got Luka. On the other hand, as you mentioned, he went to coffee, picked up the phone, went to coffee, and there's going to be a lot of resentment and jealousy and pettiness around the league by the other executives who vote on this thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's going to win it, but yeah, fair enough. But whatever it is, this is a guy who was on the chopping block. No one could understand the moves he was making. I mean, you look at back the history of Rob Pelinka. So he basically falls into LeBron James, right? He falls into the job in the first place because he's Kobe's agent. And then
Magic quiet quit without telling Jeannie, and they needed somebody to run the place.
And it's like at every turn where the Lakers have kind of been like, oh, we're gonna ride into the sunset with this thing, like then they get Wilt. And it's all of a sudden then they one of the other biggest trades in history, they get Kareem. And then all of a sudden Magic shows up in the draft. And then they go on that run. And then that's gonna end. And it's just like, oh, here's Shaq and Kobe's gonna fall to 12 and the Hornets are gonna trade him to you. And then when that's about to end, Kobe's on its last legs. Like, oh, here's Pau Gasol in a trade that is so ridiculous that Greg Popovich calls for an investigation. And then when that's running out, it's like LeBron just decides he wants to live in LA, and Rob Pelinka walks into that. And then because LeBron's there, Rich Paul gets involved, and now here comes Anthony Davis, and you win the title. And what does Pelinka do with that? He gets rid of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. He gets rid of Alex Caruso, Dwight Howard, all these reasons they won the title. And then they go to hell again, and he starts trying to pick up Russell Westbrook and Montrezl Harrell and Carmelo Anthony, and he can't pull the right lever. Oh my God, is Rob Pelinka going to keep his job? Nico on line one. You want Luka? And oh, by the way, I'll leave you enough left over to go and get Mark Williams. Now, here's the thing with the Mark Williams. 1 draft pick for Luka, by the way. DeJounte Murray went for 4. Mikal Bridges went for 5. 1 draft pick for Luka and a hurt center. But anyway, they leave him enough left over to go and get Mark Williams. And that feels like a huge win. Like they should not have had enough left over to get a rim running center that Luka wants to play with. Huge upside guy, great athlete, really feels untapped. Feels like a steal. But then they lose the trade. And in a weird way, it actually feels like a win with the guys they get coming back. Oh, now we get a first-round draft pick in Dalton Knecht. Lakers just stay winning. Either way that trade goes, it feels like they won.
I'm not so sure about the Dalton Knecht's returned home component of being a win. I do think, and we've discussed this as well the last couple of days, that just having the draft capital back is a win because maybe they dodged a bullet on Mark Williams. He's been hurt a lot. And also, like, this season you're kind of playing with house money because you got Luka and you've already been playing really good basketball anyway. They've won 6 in a row and 10 of the last 11, and they're 12 games over 500, and they're in 4th place, and they were already playing good basketball. So maybe it's a smarter move to just wait for the offseason anyway and identify a big that's like not a huge injury risk that you could pair with Luka and find him a nice lob threat. Like, I think that component of it is probably a win for them.
Listen, like I said, if the trade went through, they won. The trade didn't go through, they won. Like, somebody's going to come available. The Mavs are just going to decide they don't want Derek Lively next year. You know what? I really like that. We really wanted that 2nd draft pick for Luka. How about you give it to us for Lively? Like, that's going to happen.
We'll take the Mark Williams deal now for Lively. Before we move on to Brandon Ingram, who just got paid, what's your temperature on the Lakers? After they acquired Luka, they shot up to 3rd best odds to win the Western Conference. I'm with you that Oklahoma City is clearly the class of not just the Western Conference, but the NBA. After that, though, the Nuggets have the best odds, followed by the Lakers. I'm in a probably Nuggets greater than symbol Lakers and probably Grizz, but it's close.
Yeah, the Lakers in the short run, they needed Mark Williams. They need size. I don't think in a playoff scenario you're riding 4 rounds with Jackson Hayes, so they're going to have to figure out how small. And I think they end up losing up too many possessions on the boards. They're going to have a lot of trouble defending the rim. So no, I don't see
a lot of trouble defending. Period. I mean, outside of Vando and DFS, that's a very defensively challenged team right now.
Well, it is, and that's why AD was so huge for them. I mean, he cleaned up a team that cannot guard on the perimeter, can't keep penetrators in front, and they're going to continue to struggle with that with Luka at the front of that line. So I don't, all these duos like Butler and Curry and LeBron and Luka. It's like they're too good to say they don't have a puncher's chance. But I don't see the Lakers or the Warriors being kind of in that top tier. I still think it's OKC, and then I would start making cases after that. I think Denver, I think Houston deserves legitimate recognition with their defensive ability. And I mean, this guy, Amen Thompson, and his ability to realistically be one of the only guys in the world who you can put on a 1A scorer and not have to help too much, which is really what modern defense is about. The less you have to help, even if your guy's getting scored on, it's the help that kills you. It's the spraying out to shooters and you can't keep up with the 3-point game. That's what kills you. And Houston's got a real chance because of their defensive ability with Eason and a number of guys who can get into the ball and guard long scores, long elite scores. So I wouldn't take Houston out of that just because of their youth. I know Bill thinks that everybody has to take their lumps, but I think the Western
you're talking to the number one Houston Rockets lover here. My problem with the Rockets is that they lack a real closer. I mean, like, just look around on any given night and everybody's kind of looking at each other when it gets a little tight. And I think that's going to hurt them. But yes,
that was why Durant, and if they wanted to speed up their timeline, they have the assets to not deplete their depth and to fill the only hole they have, which to your point is Jalen Green can fill it on the right night. But
on the right night,
the only hole is that 1A scorer. And they could have filled it without depleting their depth, but they still can moving forward too. I wouldn't rule out that team in the offseason for Kevin Durant.
I didn't have this on the menu card here, but I'm going to bring it up anyway because I got you on the show and we haven't discussed it yet. When we're talking about 1A scorers and moves that have been made, I have to ask you about your Golden State Warriors who acquired Jimmy Butler. And at first I was like, I'm not sure. He wanted to go to Phoenix and KD would have been a better fit. This was a marriage of convenience, and I know it's a small sample size, but I have loved what Jimmy Butler looks like next to Steph Curry in the first 2 games. It has freed Steph up. Jimmy looks happy. He can't stop getting to the line. He shot 28 free throws in 2 games. Dude, I love this for them. How are you feeling?
When I was young, my dad, and I felt so proud about this. There was this like nut that had to be unscrewed underneath my deck when I was young. And my dad was like, you're the only one small enough to go in there and get it. And I was so cramped. I remember I've been claustrophobic ever since. Like I couldn't breathe. That's what watching the Warriors was like all season. I couldn't breathe. There was everything was so tight. They can't create any individual advantages. They can't get to the free throw line. If Steph Curry can't throw in these like heroic horse shots, we have no chance to score. And you get Jimmy Butler and it's like, I can breathe. Like everything just deflated. Like it's like unbelievable. Like his ability to just methodically take his guy into the painted area and just put his leverage into you with his hip or his shoulder and get to he like jump stops and pivots like and then finds the open man or just is patient long enough for you to the defender to revert and go to the guy. And then he goes up with it. He's getting to the line like 15, these droughts that we used to go on when we couldn't create, when the system stopped working, there's no other scorer to fear from a defensive standpoint than Curry. So you just switch all the off-ball screens and make Buddy Hield go one-on-one. We would go on so many droughts because we had to score such tough baskets. And now we have easy baskets. Now we create easy looks, free throws. It stems the tide in these games where we're having shooting droughts and it keeps us alive. It's unbelievable. I mean, realistic. I'm like you. I kind of thought like, is Jimmy still Jimmy? It's so evident to me that he is still Jimmy. Now they've caught some break. They got to play the Bulls. Then they got to play the Bucks without Giannis. And now they're going to get
the Mavs tonight.
The messy Mavs. So it's like, and they need that because it would have been pretty deflating. Even as good as Jimmy looked, you come in, you start 1-2, and you have to keep telling yourself it's going to happen. They don't really have a lot of time to play with here. So they got to win right away, get the momentum going. So this schedule is really coinciding nicely with the arrival of Butler.
Yeah, I think so too. They caught a little bit of a break here. He looks engaged. The whole thing with Jimmy is he engaged and is he healthy? And the answer right now on both fronts is yes. Now, you got a little bit of, we're only halfway through February here, right? Like talk to me in April when the playoffs roll around and is he still content and has there been any flare ups and are him and Draymond still getting along? And, like they've been super deferential to each other since he landed on the team. Right now, the vibes are really good. The basketball looks fantastic. He's the piece that they've needed. I said like over and over again, exactly what you were mentioning that, the buckets were tight when it wasn't Steph, right? Especially late in games when things were close, everybody's looking at Steph and everybody else is standing around. Now with Jimmy, you've got a 1A scorer, you've got a 1A closer. Dude. That makes everybody's job so much easier and they look good.
Yeah. And the Warriors have been better than their record in the sense that I think they've played the second most clutch games in the league, maybe even the most, but very up near the top. So basically that tells you all these games, all their games are like 50-50.
Yeah.
And now they got the guy that swings those 50-50 games. So you're talking about in this particular situation, you're not asking Jimmy Butler to come in and take a team, even like those 8-seed Heat teams that just like he had to be Superman. You're talking about a team that's within 5 points with 5 minutes to play, well over half the time they play. He's just got to win those last minutes, which is what he does. It's really, really a great marriage. If we're looking at X factors through the stretch run and then potentially into the playoffs, my man Quentin Post, because the biggest like hurdle that Steve Kerr's going to have are these non-spacing lineups with Butler and Draymond Green together. And it's like, if you got to play Kevon Looney or you got to play Trace Jackson Davis, nobody respects Kuminga as a 3-point. Basically, Curry ends up being Peyton. He ends up being the only shooter, and the spacing is going to cramp down on Jimmy Butler's office area. So Quentin Post, what you saw against Milwaukee, if this guy can like not be just a cool story, but like a viable stretch center in the playoffs to give Jimmy space to get into his office, it's an X factor to watch. It really
There's been way too much Quentin Post conversation on this show
too much.
Between you and producer Aaron, and I think like Quentin Post's family. Those are the only people who talk about Quentin Post. But Godspeed on that. We'll be sure to check out how the
there's going to be more.
We'll see how the Warriors fare tonight against the depleted and aggrieved Dallas Mavericks. All right, couple more things before we wrap up the show here. Brandon Ingram got paid yesterday. He has not played many games this season, just 18. He's had an ankle injury. He's been out forever, but got to the Raptors, got a new deal, 3 for $120. Third year has a player option. He had been eligible to sign for up to $144 million, so a little bit of a discount there. Mark Stein reported that he passed on a 4-year, $160 million offer to stay in New Orleans. He's 27 years old, Brad. He was an all-star in 2020, had the most improved. Since then, your mileage on him may vary. One, what do you think about him signing with I guess it's good for the Raptors because they're not really a destination, but on the one hand, I'm a little curious about this lineup. On the other hand, I see what Masai's trying to do with Barnes, RJ, Emmanuel Quickly, Ingram, and Pirtle as a starting 5. Like, they're going to try to actually win basketball games next year. Plus, whoever they get in the draft.
Next year. That's the key. They've basically said they're all in on the tank this year.
Well, bad news about that. They beat the Philadelphia 76ers, who just cannot win a basketball game to save their lives last night.
It's like the Nets. The Nets are in the middle of the worst tank right now. I think they won like 5 out of 6. It's like, dude, you should have dumped Cam Johnson and really gone for this thing. And you can't be winning 5 out of 6 when you're trying to lose.
What do you think that lineup? To me, what do you think the Raps could do next year though with that lineup?
Not much. I mean, I think that I think that it's what they're saying is we're going to build around length. You know, we're going to build around RJ Barrett and Scotty Barnes and Brandon Ingram. And I think your point is a good one, that they're not really in the market for the top dogs. And so we start talking about tiers of championship contenders. You're talking about tiers of scorers with Brandon Ingram. He's not perfect. He needs the ball. He's methodical. He's not really the best spacer. He shoots inefficient shots for the most part, although he's efficient at them. There's a lot of
a great 3-point
shooter. A lot of things to not love about him, but there are plenty of things to like. This guy can get you 40 in a playoff game, legit. Yeah. So if you're not eating at the big kids table in terms of free agency and trades and all that, you go get Brandon Ingram, and I think you hope that his presence now makes Scotty Barnes your franchise player. That's the play. You get him on a guy who was thought to be a max contract. You get him significantly below that. I don't think it's a terrible move, but I don't think that Brandon Ingram to me is a guy that, like, when you need 20 a night, he gets you 20. But like when you need him to be Brandon Ingram, like if he's really going to be the guy, he'll probably still get you like 18. He sort of is what he is, and if you have too high of hopes for it. And I don't think Toronto necessarily does. I don't think they have him coming in to be the guy.
I think there might be a little bit of, watch the space on RJ Barrett, because I was never really an RJ Barrett guy, but he has had a better year this season than previously. Now he's been injured recently, but I just think there's like a little bit of overlap there with him and Ingram. They've made a financial commitment to Barnes. He's their guy. They just made a financial commitment to Ingram and traded for him. They made a financial commitment to Emmanuel Quickly, who was injured for almost the entire season, but is back now and has had his first 2 games scoring 20 points or more all season back to back. plus they like Grady Dick, plus whoever they're going to get in this draft. I just wonder if maybe RJ's a trade candidate. I mentioned the Sixers just real quick about how dumb this team is. They've lost 4 in a row. They lost to the Raps without RJ and Pirtle and Ingram. They lost to the Bucks without Giannis. They lost to the Pistons without Cade. Then they lost to the Heat without Jimmy. Last night, Joel Embiid had a chance. And by the way, all 3 of their quote-unquote big 3 were available in all of those games. Everybody kept telling me, Bill was one of them, hey, just wait. When they get back, they might be able to get into the play-in. All 3 of those guys have been available. They haven't looked good. They had a chance to win last night. They were down 2. Joel Embiid, top of the arc where he likes to shoot his 3. Nobody around him, passes it up to drive the lane, and he dribbled it off his hip, which then bounced off his head, and he turned it over, and they lost the game. My question for you as an outsider is, what the hell are they doing? Shut this guy down. He just said the other day he might need a knee surgery, and he hasn't had enough time to rest. Shut him down. Try to hold on to your pick, which is top 6 protected to Oklahoma City. This team isn't doing anything if they get into the play-in. It's one of the dumbest seasons by one of the dumbest franchises I have seen in a long time, and I've seen all of them.
I bet Nico.
Thank you for my TED Talk.
I bet Nico would be interested in Embiid. Like, now that's a guy.
Great.
But that's a guy that we can count on right there. Yeah, I mean, the Sixers are a mess. The Paul George situation, again, Paul George you paid him a max contract, and everybody's like, well,
brutal.
Not really a max player. He's coming in to be the third wheel. It's like, no, dude, he's a max player. And when Embiid's out, he needs to be like a go-to guy. And it's like, he's like 18. He's 18, couple decent nights here and there. He's just not doing it. Tyrese Maxey
had a bad season.
Yeah. Well, some people would say, oh, there's some efficiency markers. And it's like, no, he's just not enough.
He played great last year. He was available. He had a career year shooting. He played awesome defense. He was incredible last year. And as good as he was last year, that's how bad he's been this year.
He's just that classic, like, you don't even know he's out there sometimes. Like, he just like blends into players he's obviously way more talented than. It's just not enough. If Joel Embiid's going to be out and those 3 are going to have no time to mold their games together, then you've got to overcome that with sheer talent, sheer production, and it's just not even close. It's not even close. The only chance the Sixers had was to buoy this season by George being awesome until Embiid can maybe get back at 80% and make a run. But they're cooked. I mean, they're the same situation as the Suns. This thing's already on borrowed time. They got to find a way to offload George. Embiid is never going to be healthy. It is what it is.
Daryl Morey gave a press conference last week, and he said, if you squint at it, you can see a championship roster. And I was like, dude, you're going to go blind. Just shut him down and boot this thing the next year. I want them to keep the pick. As I mentioned, top 6 protected to Oklahoma City. They're 1 win up on the Nets for the 6th worst record, which would give them almost a 46% chance to keep it. If they're 3 wins up on the Raptors, who they lost to last night for 5th, that would give them a 64% chance to keep it. Keep the pick, get somebody good in the draft, move on. Last thing for you, I just wanted to flag this. So I covered the Sixers up close and personal for NBC Sports Philadelphia for a long time. And when they drafted Jahlil Okafor, I said it was a mistake. They could have had Kristaps Porzingis. Right away, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. They've got Embiid. They've got Nerlens Noel. It doesn't make any sense. They took Okafor. He obviously didn't work out. Last night, Jahlil Okafor played 3 minutes in the NBA. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is he played for the Pacers last night and a loss to the Knicks. Jahlil Okafor last played in the NBA in the 2020-21 season for the Pistons. He had an Achilles injury. After the Achilles injury, he went to Japan, he went to China, he went to Spain. Most recently, he was playing in the G League for the Pacers. They just signed him to a 10-day contract. I just want to say congrats to Jahlil Okafor, because that is a long road back. Can you imagine, Brad? You were one of the top picks in the NBA. You went to Duke. Your career was not what it was supposed to be. You have an Achilles injury. And instead of just saying, I'm good, it's obviously not going to work for me, you go to Asia, you go to Europe, you go to the G League just to fight back to play 3 minutes. That's amazing. It
is. I'd be interested to see what his career earnings were. Like, does he need to keep playing? Did he, even though his career didn't go well, like, did he make a ton of money? And, you know, this is just pure love and pure dedication to, like, get back. I'd be interested in seeing that.
Well, if it's just money, I mean, wouldn't you stand to make more money in Europe than you would in the G League?
Probably.
So
I'm sure he made enough money. But yeah, the game kind of changed right on Jahlil Okafor. That was kind of right when it was moving away from post centers and slow footed. that was
Can't,
it.
right. Ball goes in, ball doesn't come out. He doesn't shoot. He's not a
Yeah.
good free throw shooter. He's not a good defender.
I remember seeing him
do.
when I was doing like a preseason thing at New Orleans Training Center, the Pelicans, and I was walking through like the food area, and I was like, "That's Jahlil Okafor." Like I didn't know. I had no idea he was playing for the Pelicans. I was like, I should have paid more attention.
So career earnings, according to producer Aaron, of $21.5 million.
All right, so let's hope that we got to take half of that off. Let's hope he invested well, so he's probably okay.
Hopefully, should be. I mean, if you're
we'll give him a love
within
of
your
the game.
means,
he's doing this for a love of the game hat tip.
Regardless of the money or whatever, he did it, and he went through all that, and that is a long road back. I'm going to guess that if I were in that situation, I would have gone off to do something other than like.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out, because I'm trying to think the amount of money I would need. Like, I don't want to play this much. I'm thinking like if I had 10 mil, I'd probably be like, I'm making the investments work.
Right. I'm going to get into the stock market. All right. Last thing we're going to do, team of the night from last night. You get to go first.
Okay. So I'm going with the Knicks because the only what's interesting to me about the Knicks is their guys play so much that all these other teams that we talk about, it's like things that we're wondering how it's going to work. Like, are the Rockets going to have enough scoring? Are the Jimmy Butler and Steph Curry going to work? Luka and LeBron, and all these different things. Where the Knicks, like, we know everything that makes them good. We know everything about them because all their guys play all the minutes, and that's who's going to play. And they've been healthy, and we've seen everything that they've got. We have seen everything. There's no like speculation. Can the Bucks turn it on? Are the Celtics coasting? Are the Cavaliers for real? Like the Knicks are what the Knicks are. We've seen it, and the only wrinkle that can come into it is Mitchell Robinson. Like how is he going to factor in this? Like the one thing left to figure out about that team if they play two big lineups with him and Towns. But they're interesting to me in watching that they're the truest team. Them and OKC, they're the truest team when you watch them. Of like, this is what they're going to be in the playoffs right now. And so I like watching them from that standpoint because you can literally start scouting them right now for May.
You can. The one variable here, or the one, it's not an unknown, but it is a giant question mark because he plays the guys the way he plays them is Tibbs. Right. Because as you mentioned, he runs these guys into the ground. Last night, I had the same reaction that producer Aaron did. He put it in our chat just now, but I was watching the game and I'm like, why is Karl Anthony Towns still on the floor with 3 minutes left? This thing is cooked. Sit him down for a second. He's got like 40 points already. He's leading the league in a zillion other things.
I think 4 of the top 5 minutes guys are the Knicks. Like they got to win that. It's like the scoring title. They got to win the minute.
It's dumb. Rest these guys down the stretch. I know he's not going to do it. All right, for me, that's team of the night number 6 for the Knicks this season, by the way. For me, I'm going to go with the Toronto Raptors. Very simple. They saved the Philadelphia 76ers from themselves by winning a game that they should not have, and the Sixers should just go away. Maybe they should disband. I don't know. They could sell. I know that the Adelsons won a team in Vegas. Maybe they could buy the team and move them to Vegas. I don't know. I just have had enough of the Sixers.
Sevens. We'll name the Sevens.
The Sevens. Fine. Off they go. Lucky number 7s. Second time for the Raptors team of the night. All right. That's going to do it for us today. We're going to be back at it tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern right here on YouTube. You can find us at Beyond the Arc CBS. Sam Quinn will join me. But for now, for Brad Botkin from CBSSports.com, be sure to read everything he writes over on our website. I'm John Gonzalez. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow.